What happens in the final 5 minutes before you die? Does everything suddenly go dark? Do you see a bright light? Does your entire life really flash before your eyes? Or does the brain experience something completely different? For centuries, death has been humanity's greatest mystery. We know what happens to the body. We can measure the heartbeat, monitor breathing, record electrical activity in the brain. But there's one thing science cannot simply measure. What does dying actually feel like from inside your own mind? The answer is complicated. There is no universal 5-minute countdown to death. Someone dying after cardiac arrest may experience a very different biological process from someone gradually dying from an illness. But cardiac arrest gives scientists one of the clearest ways to study what happens when circulation suddenly stops. When the heart stops effectively pumping blood flow to the brain rapidly falls. The brain depends constantly on oxygen and glucose. Without circulation, consciousness can be lost within seconds. But that doesn't necessarily mean every brain cell instantly stops functioning. The process of dying is more complicated than simply switching a light off. For a short period, biological and electrical processes can continue changing inside the brain. And this is where things become fascinating. Scientists studying brain activity around cardiac arrest have occasionally recorded unexpected patterns of electrical activity. Some research has found brief increases in certain high-frequency brain signals around death in a small number of patients. These findings have attracted enormous attention because similar types of activity can be associated with complex brain processing. But there's an important warning. Scientists cannot conclude from these signals alone that someone is dreaming, reliving memories, or consciously watching their life flash before their eyes. Brain activity isn't the same thing as proof of conscious experience. And yet, people who survive close brushes with death sometimes describe remarkably vivid experiences, a sensation of leaving the body, moving through darkness, seeing an intense light, feeling overwhelming peace, encountering people they know, or suddenly experiencing powerful memories. These are commonly called near-death experiences. But what causes them? One possibility involves the brain reacting to extreme physiological stress, changes in oxygen and carbon dioxide, neurochemical activity, disrupted sensory processing, and changes in brain networks could all contribute to unusual experiences. Researchers continue debating exactly how these experiences arise. Then there's perhaps the most famous claim of all. My whole life flashed before my eyes. Could that actually happen? We don't know in the literal sense. Memory isn't stored like a movie waiting to be played from beginning to end. Instead, memories are distributed across interconnected brain systems. Under extraordinary stress, unusual patterns of memory retrieval may occur that could potentially contribute to rapid, vivid recollections reported by some survivors. But there is no evidence that everyone automatically watches a complete replay of their entire life before death. And then comes another question. What about the famous bright light? Again, there are possible neurological explanations. As normal brain function becomes disrupted, visual processing can change dramatically. Some researchers have proposed that changes in activity within the visual system could contribute to tunnel-like experiences. But no single explanation has completely solved the mystery. And perhaps that's the most important thing to understand. Science knows far more about the biological process of dying than it did a century ago. But subjective consciousness remains incredibly difficult to study. We can monitor someone's brain. We can measure their heartbeat. We can record oxygen levels. But we cannot directly enter another person's consciousness and experience what they experience. That's why researchers study people who were successfully resuscitated after cardiac arrest. Their reports offer rare clues. Some remember nothing. Others describe confusion. And some report experiences so vivid that they say those moments changed their understanding of life forever. That doesn't prove an afterlife. It also doesn't prove that every near-death experience is simply an illusion. It tells us something more scientifically frustrating. we still don't fully understand consciousness. Eventually, when circulation cannot be restored, the brain experiences progressively severe failure. Neurons can no longer maintain their normal electrical and chemical balance. Organ systems fail, and biological processes that sustained consciousness can no longer continue. But there isn't a magical stopwatch that reaches exactly 5 minutes and suddenly declares everything finished. Death is a biological process, and depending on the circumstances, different tissues stop functioning at different times. So, what happens during your final 5 minutes? Science can describe many of the physical changes, but it cannot promise what you will see. Whether you'll remember your childhood, whether you'll experience peace, whether you'll see darkness, or whether you'll experience anything consciously at all. And perhaps that's why the final moments of life remain one of humanity's deepest mysteries. We've explored the bottom of the ocean. We've photographed black holes. We've sent spacecraft beyond the planets. Yet one frontier remains impossible to visit and return from with a complete answer: the final moments of our own consciousness. And until science understands consciousness itself, what happens inside the mind at the edge of death may remain one of the greatest unanswered questions of being human.